Ayomide here, and you already know what time it is. We're back for another episode of the World Without People podcast. More voices, more real stories, and even deeper conversations that challenge the way we see the world. This season, we're peeling back even more layers, exploring life, love, purpose, and the beautiful complexities of the human experience. New guests, fresh perspectives, and of course, the same unfiltered, soul stirring energy you love. So, whether you've been rocking with us since day one or you're just joining the adventure, welcome. Grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's keep the conversation going one unforgettable story at a time. Hello and welcome to another episode of The World Without People. My name is Ayomide and I'm excited to be here. I have Temitope and I think I'm really excited about the conversation. Fakayode. Jesus, Yoruba girl. Fakayode. Welcome, Temitope. Which one is I Tope, Temi? Which one?
My name is Temitope. I think a lot of people call me T because my mom also calls me T. My
really?
sisters call me T. I think I'm usually addressed more as T than Temitope. People still call me Temi because they can't pronounce the whole Temitope. People that know me from secondary school will say Tope.
That's what I was trying to figure out because obviously, as you know, I use all my many different names.
Yes, which is cool.
All right, T is going to work for today.
Mhm.
I know Temitope from my church, Agape House of Worship. And shout out to Agape House of Worship for giving me the best people. No, honestly, it's funny. I have to say this because I always try and have an intro of how I've known the person. I always think about how I know people. And the way I was thinking about this was that T got close to my best friend, right? And me, my best friend can have friends. I'm never the jealous kind, like, please, everybody should just have your own friendship. It's really, really good for me. And I don't know, maybe because I also always had my own friendships before I met Fumi. So it was a lot easier. But I'm not the kind of person who needs to know when you're hanging out, who needs to know when you're talking. But and I just like that it took its own natural course that saw enough of each other and started, oh, hi, how are you? Blah, 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 blah. Until we're now doing this today. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for coming.
Welcome. Happy to be here. Excited.
All right. The funny thing is, I now found out the other day when you were saying, oh, our one mutual friend, Onyade, shout out Onyade, if you ever hear this, is your senior in high school. I feel old.
She was 1 year my senior. She was 1 year my senior.
It just means that I'm older because I'm pretty sure I'm older than Oyande. So what?
Yes.
Excuse me, baby. I need to kind of remind myself that the one that's not going to have children yet. But
it doesn't matter. Age is just a number.
You tell me a little bit about yourself before we start.
This question, I feel like I'm being interviewed for a job. I wish it was a job. I'm getting this opportunity to tell everyone about myself. And
you never know.
Nife every day will say, oh, you just got the job. We want to work with you.
You never know.
Thank you for having me. I think this is such an interesting platform. I kind of just started following like recently. I would see like snippets here and there, but I've just started watching like closely. And it's really interesting. I love banter. And that's something about me again. I think as I've grown older, I've been able to channel it to like good use.
Right.
When I was younger, I was the girl that everyone would say she talks too much. My report card would say Tope is very intelligent, but she talks too much. There's always a but there. And I think it's more like a story of turning your weakness into your strength. As I got older, I channeled it and used it in sales. In Nigeria, I did tech sales. I was selling software. I would do presentations. And that helped me a lot. Quick story about me. My name is Temitope. I schooled in Nigeria mostly. Most of my, elementary, let me talk like a Nigerian, primary school, secondary school, university.
I don't know what it is.
Yes, because these people here, they be driving me nuts. All these elementary freshmen. So I'm not into that. My primary school, secondary school, university.
I didn't know.
I made most of my friends in secondary school. I went to Queen's College, Yaba, Lagos. Shout out to QC girls, OGs.
Oh, so then you should know my cousins.
I'm sure I would know your cousins. I'm sure I know your cousins. I went to university. Who?
We'll talk to you later.
I went to University of Ibadan. I studied German language. People are always surprised. That's a fun fact about me.
Hey, stop, pause, hold on. We cannot bypass that. You did what?
I studied German in the University of Ibadan.
Why?
And that's another podcast.
no. Yeah,
I'll give you a quick summary. So
yeah.
you know how it is growing up in a Nigerian family or Nigerian home. Your parents just want you to they don't want anything to disrupt your education. So they
Right,
just want that flow. Like you finish secondary school, you go into university, no waiting, nothing. So
right.
I'm the first of three girls, and after I did my jam, I think I
Mm-hmm.
had like 221, which was okay, it
Mm-hmm.
was decent. But for the courses I wanted to, it was not sufficient. So I wanted to do law. And if for you to do law medicine, you had to be in the 280s.
Right.
So I kind of was, very frustrated about it. I was disappointed in myself, whatever. So my mom said to me, "There's no need to cry about this.
Mm.
Let's look for something you can still use your score for." I had two disappointments. First of all, I didn't get the score I wanted. Two, the school I wanted, which was every most QC girl's dream, was Unilag. I
Okay.
didn't really like. I was like, what's happening? So my mom said, you know what? Let's do change of course. Let's do change of university. So
Mm.
it so happened that we knew somebody in Ibadan. Said, oh,
Mm.
Ibadan's a good school, but I have a lot of courses, blah blah blah. Okay, languages are usually require less in terms of scores.
Right.
Try languages. The UI offers German, Russian, and French. I was like, French is difficult, so I'm not even trying to do French. I said, my mom said,
Wait, you thought French was much more difficult than German?
yes, because I think I had a bad experience with French from secondary school. Like French
Okay.
teachers, I was just over it. I wasn't going to
Okay.
do Russian. I'd watched Russian movies and it was too stoic, like hush, hush, hush. I'm not going to be talking like that. So I think the closest
Oh
thing
my
to
god.
German was watching.
Wasn't
No,
really into
no,
TV
there
when
was
I
a
was
show
young.
called Telematch. Most kids who grew up in Nigerian homes would have.
Excuse me, I grew up in Papa Nigeria.
No,
I
yeah.
just wasn't allowed to watch TV.
Okay, so you were a nerd. You were in a nerd
Yes,
in professor home. Okay, maybe I was not in a professor home. We used to watch TV. There was something called Telematch. They used to go
right.
on NTA. So it was like a game show. Something like a game show. And they used to speak it was done in Germany. There was the eins, zwei, drei. They used to say the numbers in German. That piqued my interest. My mom said, let's try. So we applied and I was able to get in. And I will tell you this for a fact. Studying German in UI opened doors I would have never expected. I did German. It
Mhm.
made me more self aware that I am an intelligent person. I
Right,
never explored that part of myself. When you're in QC, you're not special. You're just
right,
regular. When I got to UI doing German, I had to study. Nobody in
right.
my class knew German. I studied it. I did so well. Everybody in UI would bet that I came out with the first class. I was this close. I had like
Oh,
2 points away really well. And me excelling in that course, I got two scholarships. One was to travel to Germany. So I went to Germany because I studied German in
wow.
UI. I did well because it was not open to everybody. So I went to
Yeah.
Munich in 2008. I stayed with the guest family. I experienced Oktoberfest. I was
Oh,
when Bayern Munich was playing at some point.
oh,
An amazing.
and now I'm jealous.
No, don't be jealous. No. So
Oh my
that
god,
that
that's
is a
so
very memorable time in my life that I would never forget. I'm grateful for that opportunity. So I
sweet.
did German, but when I was done from school, is it a regret for me? No, I didn't really use what I studied. I was more interested in like sales, because I
Right.
I did my NYC in the bank. I was in
Okay.
corporate and commercial banking, marketing and sales. I liked it because I like talking, meeting people. So eventually I did that. Anyway, to wrap it all up, I did most of my career in sales, tech sales.
Right.
Now I'm not in sales. I'm a systems analyst now, but I'm still in IT. So I'm a
Right.
systems analyst. I'm a healthcare system analyst in one of the hospitals here in America. I have two amazing boys, the light of my world. I love to assemble. I love to assemble. If I get a delivery of a box that has something to assemble, my adrenaline pumps. Like I love it. Like I have a toolbox where I have a Phillips screwdriver, a flathead screwdriver, I have
Oh,
Allen keys, I have hammer, I have everything. So I love
oh,
to assemble stuff from scratch. I used to cook as a side hustle. I do
right.
that a lot. Anytime obviously I have to cook, I have kids,
Yeah.
but I can cook. When I cook, it's good.
All right.
That's a little, summary about me. You want to know?
That is perfect. First of all, you
Exactly.
told see a little bit of the firstborn. I'm actually surprised, but I now see it. So
Really?
yes, I'm surprised. I would have thought middle or last child, honestly, just from your personality. But I also see it because I'm a first child. I see how a lot more loving and just I personally think, anyways. I think that as much as firstborns get a hard, firstborn girls, anyways,
Mhm.
get a hard rap, but I think we are also the most loving,
Yeah.
and we're also the most like smiley.
Smiling, selfless,
What can be
wanting to help everybody.
right? I feel like that smiling thing. People are like, I don't understand. Your life is hard, and I'm like, yes, but that doesn't have anything to do with me.
Exactly.
You
Life
know,
continues, right?
exactly. That's also fun. Obviously, we hadn't talked this much, so it's interesting to know that one QC girl. She was in QC. Wait, I
Was in
did not.
Queen's Park, yeah.
Okay,
That's why I know her from. So I'm very sure that's
later.
where, yes, she was in Queen's Park. She was 1 year senior.
Yeah, I actually forget that. Thinking about all the people we probably know together
Oh
now.
yeah.
That's so
It's gonna be a long list.
yeah, such a small world. And
Mhm.
then you said you went to, I mean, this whole German thing is just, now I'm jealous actually, but it's
Don't
just
be.
a,
Don't
but
be.
it makes sense when you said it was an opportunity to be able to do things that you never, because I can imagine that now you can say you want to be a diplomat
Yes,
or
to do that. I'm thinking
I'm
about
telling
this.
you, an ambassador, and because you can speak the language, it's not too many people in the entire Nigerian hemisphere that could probably do that, especially if you keep it. It's funny though, I met someone. Hmm. I met someone who also mentioned this randomly. Something about they know it. Anyways, we'll talk about this after. I'm so excited now because this whole family, I think I remember their name now, also mentioned this. Some skills that you just think are such, it's just something you have in your folder. I'm saying that can open many doors.
Yes,
Anyways,
definitely. Mhm.
anyways, we have a topic and we've already talked for 15 minutes. We can go another for
I
we'll
know.
try and keep it, we'll try and keep it short.
Yes, sweet. Shut.
Yes, we have a topic today, daddy issues. I'm excited about this because one, I don't know too many people that are bold about it, especially given that your dad is still alive, right?
Yeah,
And
very
he's
much
likely not
so.
going to listen to the podcast, fine.
Right too.
Fair enough, right?
Yes.
But it's not a topic a lot of people are willing to talk about. And
Yeah.
I just asked, I don't know why. I don't know what made me think of talk about it. And it was like, oh, I want to have you on my podcast. And it's funny because you had texted something on my podcast page a year ago. I didn't even see what you were responding to. So I didn't even know what you were responding to. So I'm like, oh, but you sent your number. And I'm like, girl, I didn't even see that because
Yeah.
I'm not good with Instagram. I'll be honest, as much as I put everything on Instagram, I'm also not good with like.
Like
So I'm just like, before I had even seen that, I'd already
Mhm.
thought about it. And I was like, this is confirmation.
Yeah.
And I asked, what do we want to talk about? She's like, we could talk about daddy issues. I'm like, tell me all about it. I don't know anything about it. So I'm excited to hear anything.
Mm-hmm.
Important topics
Yes.
as a female, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't realize both men and women, or boys and girls, I should say, want their daddies, need their daddies. It just doesn't really matter how it goes. But in a world where we're seeing a lot of more divorces and things like that,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important we talk about it. So men who listen can, yes, be divorced, but you can still have a relationship with your children so
Okay.
that
Mm-hmm.
those daddy issues don't occur. But people often forget that even when parents are together, there can still be daddy issues when the man is not treating the woman.
Definitely. Definitely.
Tell us a little bit about what daddy issues mean for you.
Okay.
Yeah. Hey everyone, if you're enjoying the podcast, please don't forget to hit the subscribe, like, or share button. Whether you're on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or YouTube, your support helps us to reach more people. Stay tuned for more amazing conversations, and thank you for being a part of our community.
I can explain how much joy is in my heart to talk about this openly. I talk about this with friends, even acquaintances who share the same story or
Right,
are going through the same thing. But to be able to say it openly, I feel like it's also part of my journey to
right,
total healing. The
right.
more you talk about experiences and what you're dealing with and battles you're fighting, I feel like you're taking away like less. You're becoming less burdened, right?
Right.
You're able to, just distress and just, shake everything out. I'm happy doing this and I'm thankful to you for this platform. It's going to help a lot of people who are not able to come out like me.
Right.
They're going through the same thing. Daddy issues to me, I just thought it was a one-way streak, like it was just one variation. But I
Mm.
later found out
Mhm.
there's so many variations to it. To me, daddy issues is more like when I was younger, I was a daddy's girl. I remember my dad going to work and we having little signs in my memory. I look very much like my dad. I look like my dad. in every aspect. I talk, walk, I look like my dad. My mom will tell you this for certain. Like, there was a divorce that happened, and
Right.
it meant him leaving. I feel like there was a void that was created by
Mm-hmm.
him without him knowing. And for me, later on in my later years, like in my 30s, even in my late 20s, I started to realize that I was looking for that love
Mm-hmm.
a father should have given a daughter from maybe from guys I want to date. So there was that missing void. So I think the word daddy issues for me, I started to like resonate with it more when I started to see like I was looking for someone to protect me, to stand in
Mm-hmm.
that gap as my dad. And that was not their job. It was
Right.
my dad's job. But
Right.
since he wasn't present, I was always looking for it, but it was just never there. So I was always disappointed, shattered. There were always moments where I would think, how can my dad be alive and I'm going through this? How can my dad be
Mm-hmm.
alive? I don't have the confidence. You sound like somebody who's close to their dad. I might be
Mm-hmm.
wrong, but there's a different way a girl that has a father present in their life. There's a different way they operate.
Mm-hmm.
Found out recently, I can't even articulate it. They
Right.
move differently. The confidence is unmatched. When you meet girls close to their dad that
Right.
have their dad as either their confidant or their business advisor or financial advisor, but you know they have a dad presence in their life, they move differently. They are not afraid, they are bold. I'm telling you
Mm-hmm.
this. I know I struggled with being confident about certain things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a bubbly person. So people
Right.
mistaking that for confidence. I'm bubbly,
Right.
I'm such a sanguine, I'm talkative. But I struggle with being in certain spaces. I used to struggle though. I've overcome that. That's
Mm-hmm.
the girls who have their dad present, they got balls.
Really? Interesting.
You can do your little survey.
Research. I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm gonna
Research.
start researching.
I didn't have that. So I was looking for it in the wrong people. I was always met with disappointments. I struggled with that for a while. It was the foundation of most of my emotional problems that I was having.
Mm,
The fact that
mm,
my dad wasn't present, but I knew he was alive.
yeah,
And I don't know where he is. I felt like, how come this person is alive and he doesn't even know who I am? He doesn't care about me.
mm,
He doesn't know what school I went to. He doesn't know anything about me. He's living, he's breathing. That
right,
was one of my struggles. So
yeah,
the daddy issues in itself was more about always trying to look for that father love that I didn't
yeah,
get from my dad, from most of the time from guys that I would have like maybe a romantic interest
yeah,
for or whatever. And trust me, the turn, what the outcome would always be.
yeah.
Mostly disappointments.
Yeah.
So that's
Oh,
what.
I have a question. I was talking to my friend who lost her mom at a young age.
Mhm,
And a lot of what she was describing felt to me like, just what I had experienced in my parents' divorce, right?
mhm,
But not exactly the same thing, obviously, because I think what you're saying is, the person is alive, but you can't access. Whereas, it's different when, you know, the person is dead. So I guess I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, have you noticed if girls that have their dads who are dead as opposed to,
mhm,
who are not alive, as opposed to alive, like where will you say that confidence falls in? And so, I mean, that you were asking if I have a relationship with my dad, I do, but my parents were divorced since I was 10.
mhm,
But my mom always says that, we're just really good children, and we just, I think it was just God that made it all work. I don't attribute my confidence
mhm.
to having a relationship with my
Your dad.
father.
Mhm,
I attribute my confidence to my relationship with Godfather, and maybe because I'm a first child. Just one of those first child, right?
yeah.
I also know there's a spectrum in some of these things, but one of those first childs where it's like, you cannot beat me, you cannot kill me, nothing. That kind of thing. And then add life issues, and you're like, there's nothing this one wants to do.
Yeah.
Anyways, I say that to say, what would you say? Is it when that missing void, do you see it more when somebody's alive but they're not present
Mhm,
versus someone is alive? Some people, even if their father is in their home,
mhm.
grew up with them, but is also not present.
Yeah.
Present, not just
Being there physically.
exactly,
Yeah, it's like
exactly.
a day to day being involved, being intentional, and all that
Right.
stuff. So for me, so it's tough because it's like, okay, I know this person is there, they're alive, and there's the access thing. So it's not like I don't have access to him. I have
Right.
his number. He
Yeah.
would text me on my birthday, but we don't have an organic relationship that I would I would prefer, right?
Right. Right.
So in my own, I think what I would say is, if you were not alive, for example, right, and then I know I'm not missing anything because it's not there. That's how I
About
imagine
it.
it. But
Right.
I think the hurt was more because I know he's alive. Somebody's alive and they're not looking for you. They're not asking about you. It feels like somebody just gave you up
Yeah.
when
Yeah.
you were
Yeah.
feeling. Even
Yeah.
though I'm not adopted, but that's how I feel.
Right.
That's how I felt. To me, it's more of knowing that they are accessible.
Yeah.
So not having that access, if though they're accessible, was part of the hurt and part of what I struggled with understanding. Why are you not looking for me? Why
Yeah.
are you not trying to ask me when it was time for me to drive? Why were you not the one that taught me how to drive? Right?
Mm.
Why were you not the one? I'm asking those questions. They're
Yeah.
rhetorical. Who am I asking? It's in my head. Like,
Yeah.
that's what it is for me. So obviously, that was me just assuming with you and asking about the confidence thing.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm just talking about a couple of friends that are very close to their dad. The way they
Yeah.
move is different. I
Yeah.
know it has to do with the kind of confidence their father instilled in them, and
Yeah.
that's the role a dad plays in the girl child. I'm
Yeah.
very specific about that. As a girl child, there's a difference with
Yeah.
what your dad says to you, how he advises you versus your mom. It's very
Yeah.
different. So to me, it was more like if he wasn't there, it was whatever. I would know he's not there, he's not accessible. So there's no pain, there's no, oh, why is he not? I can't be asking questions. But if
Yeah.
you're here, like
Yeah.
that's to me, that's like where the major problem started from, you
Yeah.
know.
No, but and don't get me wrong, I totally agree. You just said about driving. It's funny, I just I first of all drove the car and got into an accident, and then I came here learning how to drive. I say all of that to say it is a thing, right? I guess maybe I'm not a person who asks questions about these kind of things. Like for me, it's just everybody makes their own choice and moves on. But I hear what you're saying because for a girl child, it's important to have, and for every child, particularly a girl child, that presence of mind of a parent, especially a dad, who's telling you you're beautiful, who's telling you you're confident, who's telling you let
Exactly.
any boy be talking to you anyhow. You
Exactly.
know, those kind of things. Who's like paying your bills, so you're not looking for man to pay your
Exactly.
thing.
I have my own sugar daddy. Like, I'll call my dad. Don't worry, I'm fine. My daddy is this.
Exactly, exactly. I
Yeah.
do think it's important, and again, not to like I said, I think I was fortunate that my dad still was there, and at the very least, I could fight with my dad. I think it was
Mm,
that was the good thing about me and my dad. We'll enter the same path if
that's
we
good.
if we
That's
have
good.
to.
That's good.
It's not exactly fun, but at least
Yeah.
we'll do that. But it's not always the case with everybody. But you just said something now, so beyond the confidence, I think that beyond that whole he's there to talk to you and he's there to, I guess, instill confidence, what else did you particularly feel like was missing? So you talked a lot about how like it affected you in relationships. How
Mm,
did you see it come up? So again, for me, like I said, we can go back and forth as to how all this plays out in different
mm,
father kind of relationships, but I just decided not to date for like the very longest time. Like seriously, and I think I've said this story before. For a good 10 years, I'm like, I'm focusing on school anyways. Nobody should talk to me. No one
mm,
talked to me until I was done with school.
mm,
So for me, that was my own, and this is how people used to say I had daddy issues, right? Like so,
mm.
basically, I was running away from relationships,
Yeah,
right?
there are different nuances to it and variation. I told you.
Exactly, exactly. So
Yeah.
how was this affecting you in relationships?
In relation, so in relationships, right? I feel like I was always okay. Like I said, let me go back to they say you should do root cause analysis. So going back to when I was a little girl, I remember Topway as a 5-year-old girl, right?
Mhm.
I feel like I used to look at my dad as like, I won't say my God, like my savior. Like I
Mhm.
really looked at my dad as my dad, like somebody, like like
Mhm.
he was. I mean, he's Yoruba. Oh Lord, me,
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
was that person.
Significant.
He was
Yeah.
that guy. Like I really looked up to him for a lot of things. So when that separation and the divorce eventually happened,
How old were you?
I think I was 5 when he left. I
Mm.
was 5 when he left, yes. The whole process of the divorce, I know I can't remember specifically when, but I know
Right.
it didn't happen. But I know from 5, I know he had left. So I the memory that I'm talking about now is from when I was 5 and younger,
Mm.
right? But I remember certain things. So for me, I feel like when I would meet a guy, right, there were two things. I always wanted that love that I kind of remembered having from my dad, like being, I was the first girl, so I
Yeah.
was his first love. I was, so I always wanted that same exact. I was looking for that same exact love
Mm.
from, from guys,
Right.
and I wasn't getting it. So,
Mm.
the more I didn't get it, the more I was mad at my dad, right?
Mm.
I was mad, like you're the one who caused this. Like, I'm trying to feel what is unfeelable at this point. Like,
Mm.
like I just felt like I was very needy.
Mm.
I became very needy, and the neediness didn't come out of the blues. It came from the fact that I didn't have that male figure
Yeah.
for a while. Okay, I didn't tell you this. I would mention now. We're three girls,
Right.
so I grew up with just females.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
mom and the three of us. So that male energy was non-existent.
Mm.
And when I started to now be aware of that male energy, or come close to that, come in contact with that male energy, in terms of, okay, I'm old enough to date,
Right.
I didn't really understand what that concept was, because I was just looking for that love. Like, oh, my dad was not there. So I wouldn't say I was idolizing these people, but I think I was looking,
Yeah. Yeah.
idolizing them. I was such a people pleaser, kiss their ass,
Mm.
everything. I just wanted that person to be there. Then, I don't want to complicate this topic, but I
Yeah.
think that kind of also formed my attachment style.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I'm abandoned. I'm a anxious abandonment attachment style.
Anxious avoidance.
No, I'm not avoidant. I'm
Okay.
I'm anxious. Anxious. I
Okay.
don't know if there's an abandoned one. I don't know, but I think it's anxious.
Yeah.
I'm that person. Like, if I'm dating somebody, if you don't call, that was before. I'm now. This girl you're talking to is changed. In fact,
Hallelujah.
my name is not Dr. My name is Ayomide Jesus. That's the girl.
Hallelujah.
That hallelujah. That girl before, in fact, my cousins, my sisters, I'm sure they can remember this. Very needy. Like, if you don't
Mm.
call me, I feel like you've left. That
Mm.
you've left was coming from my dad. Right?
Yeah.
Once I'm not hearing from you, once you're not, I feel like you've left. I become like crazy, you know.
Yeah.
So this is what I'm talking about. Like, those things started to show up, in the way I
Yeah.
was responding to, like, somebody is not calling you, they're busy, like, just do
They
your own
went to
thing,
work.
do it to work. Like, I'm just here going crazy. Why didn't you call me? Waiting on my phone. Check. It was madness at some
Mm.
point.
Mm.
But I know where that came from. Now I know. Then I probably was in denial. So
Yeah.
this is part of the things. Yeah.
And you say now you know. Did you do therapy? Did you? And
Mm,
you're using a lot of the words. So I'm saying like anxious. That's why I was like anxious avoidance because I know some of these things. Psychology degree. Like okay,
yes.
is
No, no.
this?
So,
Yeah.
did I do any therapy? I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. In fact, I tried to do therapy. I did it, I think, twice. My attempt was it twice, but I don't think it was working for me. Right?
Mm.
I'll tell you what worked for me. So in 2020,
Mm.
during the COVID era,
Yeah.
I was in a very dark place,
Mm.
extremely dark place. I was going through it because I would say, I had now gotten to the realization, I had to now face the fact that I was a victim of domestic violence, right?
Mm.
Verbal, physical, emotional. So it still took me back to my dad. I'm telling you, everything ties to my dad. So
Yeah.
I'm here by myself, my apartment. I'm asking questions again. I always ask questions like, if my dad was there for me, would anybody dare to treat me anyhow? That kind of thing. Like, would
Mm.
anybody dare to put their hands on me? Would anybody dare to talk to me anyhow? Like, I'll just say,
Mm.
I'll tell my dad. That kind of thing. Like, that was what was going. You say, I'll tell my daddy for you.
You really got daddy's girl. Eh?
I'm a daddy's girl. Like, that's what I wished I would have been able to say, but I couldn't say that, right? And so I was in a very dark place. I struggled a lot. And another thing that happened was, during that period, this same person, like my dad, who I expected to be there for me, was not. In
Mm.
fact, he turned around to kind of encourage me to, stay in abuse. And I'm like, this is that really tore me, actually.
Yeah.
So in that moment, I think I turned to God. People, it's cliche, but God
Yeah.
was my own therapy. That
Yeah.
was my therapy. I turned to Him. I cried to Him. I prayed. I had my moments. I think being indoors also helped. Not being able
Right.
to go out, spending a lot of time with him, cried and cried and cried. Did a lot of purging. I purged a lot, and I think I got better. It was in that moment my sister, she'll probably listen to this, hopefully. She kind of told me the story of the Phoenix. So my name on Instagram is T Phoenix. People think it's because I live in Arizona. I don't live in Arizona. Don't have anything to do in Arizona. The Phoenix in my name on Instagram is the bird, the Phoenix.
Yeah.
And if you know the story of how the Phoenix is, or the metamorphosis of a Phoenix, you would understand why I use that name. So my
Yeah.
sister actually gave that to me, and explained to me like, oh, right now you're starting from your ashes, you're rebuilding yourself, like just like the bird, the phoenix, and that's where that came from. But also in that moment as well, when things started to get better for me, I kind of, like I said, I prayed. I listened to a lot of worship songs. Shout out to Travis Green. Shout out to Maverick City. Hey, they really held me to. They were my therapists. I didn't need to pay anything for them to be my therapist. There was a particular song about having your father. I forgot who sang that song. Having the father of all fathers, which is your father in heaven. So I started to understand the concept of, there's an earthly father, and the ultimate person that you should actually lean on to is the father in heaven. And so when those words were spoken to me in my mind, I then told myself, I must be the beloved one of my father. And so I
Oh,
gave
shit.
myself Ayomide. And
Yeah.
that name has followed me and has done good things in my life. So I
Wow.
didn't do therapy like you, like, oh, hi, Dr. Nife. Thanks a lot. Can you help me with the techniques? No, I didn't do that. It
Yeah.
didn't work for me. I
Yeah.
prayed.
Yeah.
I prayed. I worshipped, I cried, I did all of that by myself. And I
Mm.
came out of it, one way or the other. And that was really what made me more self aware and
Mm.
made me understand who I was as a person. Because if you don't know
Mm.
who you are, it's very hard for you to find solutions to your problems,
Mm.
or find techniques or things to use or adapt to help you become a better person or to come out of a situation. If you don't know who
Right.
you are, it's hard.
Right.
So I needed to first find who I was. Like, there was my goal was to find out who I really was,
Yeah.
and doing that helped me to come out of that dark hole that I was in.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mhm.
I think there's still some practical things you have to do though. I mean, obviously shout out to God. See, I always tell people my psychology degree, like going through school and
Mhm.
hearing all these things
Mhm.
actually was what helped. And then God, like I didn't have to go to therapy because of that.
Mhm.
I have tried therapy too, same. And I feel like it's something I could even potentially do. But I also feel like my friends are like my therapist, so that's been helpful.
You should
That's
pay them.
I know, and they should pay me equally because I
Exactly.
really
It's both ways. Okay, yeah, 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 both ways. It's a mutually beneficial relationship.
exactly,
Yeah. Mhm.
exactly. But I do think that again, for anybody who's listening, therapy is also really good. Please hear me out. That's not what we're saying. It just happened to work for us that God was helpful. But I
Mhm.
do think, like I said, I've been hearing you use some certain words like you don't know anxious avoidance attachment style if you haven't read or like done some kind of, like you said,
Oh
searching
yeah,
or
searching.
things. So that's what I want to you
Oh
talk a little
here.
bit
Oh
about.
yeah, yeah. Also, oh yes. Now, thanks to Instagram. Now, Instagram is because I'm not the reader of my house. The person that reads the most in my family is the second child, Banker. She's the
Yeah.
one that reads. She's reading since she was 3 years old. I'm not the reader. Like how I passed school, passed or came out in flying courses because I didn't miss classes. I'm very audio visual. If I go to class, I'm not
Yeah.
going to fail. Like that's how I
Right.
am. So I watch a lot of videos. I followed a couple of people online. I
Yeah.
listened to, first of all, there was about knowing who you are. Like, for example, the me temperament thing, me
Yeah.
knowing, sanguine, are you choleric? Are you, those things people think is just, "Ugh, you have come again." But
Yeah.
those things actually help you a lot,
Yeah.
So I had to find out who I was, my vices, my strength, my weaknesses. I did a whole SWOT analysis on myself.
Oh
Point.
shit.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I had to really find out who I really was using those techniques or those, approach. I watch videos, I listen to, maybe psychologists or people who, I mean, are well grounded in these topics. And then there was the whole the attachment style I needed to I needed to read about a little bit and then listen to as well, because that was going to help me too in relationships, not
Right.
only even with the opposite sex, even with French, even in friendships. I needed
Mm,
to understand my attachment style so that I
yeah.
don't get frustrated. So
Yeah.
that was more of it. So I would say Instagram, a little
Yeah.
bit of reading, talking to, like you two, talking to friends who are very knowledgeable, not just any friends, because
Yeah.
there's so much you have to filter from. Talking to
Yeah.
my friends that I know that understand what I'm looking for in this conversation, I was
Right.
able to break it down for me. So
Right.
those things still helped. Yes.
Okay, that's
Yes.
good.
Yes.
And I know, like you said, that he's still alive. So have you been able to talk to him? Have you, like, because like I said,
Ah, different.
we talk
Mm.
and we fight, like a lot of fights,
Mm.
but at least
Yeah.
there's still that
There's just something.
opportunity to
Mm.
address those things. I think, to your point, since 5, I mean, that is such a very, very young age. And it's unfortunate that these things happen. There's not necessarily anybody to blame. I think for me, the harder thing is just, these things can still happen and you can still have a relationship with your children,
Yeah,
right? And I think for
definitely.
me, that's the thing that sometimes I don't understand. And I
Mhm.
always have questions about that. So I initially said I don't have questions, but I have questions about that. Like, what did the child ever do to you? Nobody asked
Right.
to give birth to the child.
Very personal
you know
questions.
and it's to your point, like you have 3. Like, sometimes I used to wonder, I'm like, how did you guys have 4 children? Like, what
Oh
was
no,
happening?
3 for my mom, because I'm like you too. I have half siblings.
Okay, 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 okay. No,
So
and that's another thing. Did your dad remarry?
yes, he did.
Okay,
He
okay,
did. So I have siblings. I have 5 that I know of.
okay, okay,
Yes, 5 that I know of. Yeah, he remarried. Yeah, so well, just 3 for my mom and
okay,
him. Yes.
okay.
So you were asking, did I have I do I how did I end up talking to him? Whatever. Okay, so I'll tell you a very important. Like I think one of the no, I would say it was a turning point in my life, but no, I'll talk about the first time I realized that I really had major daddy issues,
Yeah,
and then the turning points, right? I'll talk about those 2 things. So, Agape, we're very big on celebrating everything, the
yeah.
fathers, I mean, everything that makes sense, not just everything. So, Father's Day, Mother's Day, and they would always do something on the side that would make it, more special, like pictures, presentation, whatever. So, there was this 2020, 2020,
Mm,
yes, or 19, no, 2019. There was a Father's Day celebration in church,
mm,
and there was a slideshow that was put up with you know fathers and their children, and there was a slideshow that had this very touching song in the background. I was watching it, I was crying.
mm,
I was crying. At first I thought it was the music that was I was touched. When you're touched by something, I was like, oh, I'm being emotional. But no, my tears moved from me being emotional to hurt. I
mm,
was, when you're crying from your gut,
mm,
I was crying. I
mm,
couldn't hold myself. I was hysterical. My hands were shaking. So I
mm,
stepped away, went to the bathroom, kind of calmed myself down. By the time I checked the mirror, my eyes were like red. I mean, when I
mm,
cry, you would know because my eyes
mm.
are big. I'm crying. My everywhere is like red. I get back into the sanctuary. I had to put on my sunglasses because I knew people were going to be asking me, "Are you okay? What happened to you?" But I was not happy that service. I was so hurt. I was like, "Why?" So
Mm,
that happened, and I was like, girl, you need to get a hold of yourself. This is something that is deep down inside of you, like eating you up. You don't even know. I'm carrying
mm,
this. I would say it was unforgiveness. I'm carrying
mm,
unforgiveness. I'm carrying bitterness. I
mm.
need to like get to the root of it and kind of, get a hold of myself. So that happened. I shoved it aside. So when I had my whole issue with the whole, like, my kid's father and everything,
Yeah.
and he had reached out. So I've not heard from him in years. I'm
Mm,
talking years,
mm,
right? And then the next time I hear from him, it was such an awkward reaching out that he had to introduce himself and say, "Hello, this is Doctor Blah blah blah, your
that's
father." Yes, that's how we had not been speaking. And his
fine.
conversation to me was me, "Oh, you should go back, go back to this, go back to that." I was livid. So
Mm,
as much as I at that period, I didn't know myself. I think I knew myself to the point that I knew that I don't take the word of God lightly.
Right.
So I remember that talk about honor your parents,
Your
honor your
mother.
father and your mother.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, I'm not going to be rude. I'm
Mm.
not going to respond back because if I responded back in the flesh, it would have not been good. I don't know. Don't hold yourself back. Don't respond in the flesh. Respond in the spirit. So I blocked him. I'm going to say that. I'm being honest with you. I blocked him to avoid me responding back or
That's a very mature thing. I don't think I would. I would have said she. I would, and I love God. I love God with all my heart. But he would have had to like be thinking me later. I would have been like, "Who is this? And why are you texting me? Block yourself."
so
Sound like
I blocked him for a whole year. A whole
mm,
year. I didn't say anything to him. I just blocked him. I think he texted me with another number and said, "Thank you for blocking me." He said something petty. I just that one said I blocked the other number too. So after a year, I mean, some people will hear this and say, "Ah, that was rude. That was disrespectful." But that was the only way
no. I
I
don't think
could.
anybody will say that.
Well, people are funny with their analysis of the analogy of things. So me, I blocked him because I
Yeah.
always tell people this. There's this thing they say if your eyes cause you to sin,
Yeah.
like
So
stop
cut it
them.
off.
Me,
Exactly.
I translate that in my current day that if anything inconveniences me or wants to cause me to go against God's word or against my character, I block you. That's the Oyinbo version of it. That's what the button is there for. I block you. When you
I
decide to
love
act right, I
it
unblock you.
so much.
Simple. It's there. So I blocked him
I
for a
love
whole
it.
year, got myself together, worked on myself, worked on my emotions. I wanted to be able to talk to him without crying or breaking down because that was
Mm,
something I was struggling with. When I
mm,
was talking, every time I talked about him to somebody midway, I'll start crying. If I wanted to
mm,
talk to him himself, I said no. I want to work on my emotions, like
mm,
regulate my emotions, be more centered, like work on myself. So when I thought I'd got to a good level with all this my mission, I unblocked him. And then I wrote a whole epistle about how unhappy I was with the way he handled things,
right.
about his absence in my life. I expressed myself with it. I was very raw with him.
Mm,
I didn't hold anything back, no filter.
mm,
He responds back, thanks me for unblocking him. This was all text, no, not voice. I was in my
right.
car. I'll never forget. I was in my car. It was August 2021.
Mm,
I was in my car. And he texted back, acknowledged it. Then he said he was sorry. I was the first text I saw, I'm sorry, I started to cry
mm,
because his nature is he's a typical Nigerian father, you
right.
know, extremely is the definition of patriarchy. Is that Niger, dad, true and true. Everybody should respect him, that. So there was that fear I had for him too. I couldn't face him. Nobody could face him. Nah. So this one I was like, no, I can't serve two gods. The only person I
Mm.
fear is God. You are a
I'll
mere
tell you
mortal.
somebody.
You're a mere mortal like me. I will face you head on. We'll have this conversation. So he said he was sorry. That's not in his character to
Right.
to apologize. He did say he was sorry. I was like, wow. He goes further to say he loves me and he loves my sisters. Maybe I
Mm,
was an emotional wreck. I
mm,
cried for an hour in my car. And to me, after I was done crying, I asked myself, like, was I just looking for those words from my dad? Like, did I
yeah.
just want my dad to say, I love you?
Yeah.
Because after he said it, the way I cried was abnormal. I
Right.
cried, I cried. I was like, oh my God, this is all I wanted to hear from him,
Yeah. Right.
And that opened the doors for conversation. We started
Mm,
chatting, catching up. Showed him his grandkids. We started talking every day.
mm,
It was better.
yeah.
I could easily text him without having any fear, anything in my mind, and
Mm-hmm.
I felt lighter for once. I
Right.
felt I felt like something had changed in my life. I couldn't explain it. It wasn't. It was abstract, but I
Right.
know that there's something changed in my life. I was happy. I felt
Yeah.
I felt among. I was like, Mister. I was like, oh, my daddy. Like I was able to say. Don't make me emotional here. I was able to say my daddy for once and say, "Oh, hello, daddy," and he was like heartfelt. I was like, "No, this damage had been for too long. Like I'm
Mhm.
getting emotional." I was like, I can't believe that all I wanted to hear from my dad was "I love you," just for him to. I'm sorry.
No, trust me, we cry on this podcast.
Oh no!
We cry
Like
on this
the
podcast.
fact
You're
that
about to make me cry, so I'm trying not to cry myself. So thank God
so
I'm wearing glasses.
the
It can't
fact
be.
that he was able to say those words to me, I felt like I'd waited like 3 decades of my life to hear my own dad tell me I love you. And that just made everything much better for me. At that point, I didn't even think about what he did or what he didn't do. I just was happy that I had my dad back, more or less, you know. And to me, that was another lesson for me when it came to forgiveness.
Mm,
When they tell you about forgiveness is not just about the person, it's about you,
yeah.
so that was really like that was a turning point for me.
Mm.
And I can it helped me a lot. It helped me even for this woman you're speaking to right now. That moment did a lot of good to me right now speaking to you.
I want to cry.
It's okay.
No, but I really love this because it's funny. I know we said we are going to talk about daddy issues, but I think a lot of what I'm just hearing is just how mature and wise you've been, especially since that 2020 encounter. And it really, I mean, sorry to the non-Christians, but for me as a Christian, it just really shows you what God does in things that, for example, for me, 4 years of school is what helped me, right, be able to, and again, obviously God using that 4 years of school, but it sounds to me like 4 years of school, right, and he did it for you in what, a couple of months or a couple of encounters
It-
of crying, right, you know what
yes,
I mean, and then all of a
yes.
sudden you're able to accelerate all the things that you have been going through for so many years before, because what, 2020 to now is just 5 years,
It's
and
fine.
it sounds to me like you're a totally different person from who
I
you
am.
were, you know.
I
So it just really shows you what God can do. That's number one.
am.
But so I wasn't sure if you were saying your two sisters are from your dad as well,
Yes,
right?
the three of us
Okay.
are from my dad. Yes, three of us are
Yeah,
from
so
my
I
dad.
was gonna say that, do they also now have a relationship? And because and I find that you will be surprised, like the same house, the same father, the same mother, and the way we all look at our parents, and I'm just like, is it not the same house we're coming from? Like, I'm so confused. Much less in your case, right?
Yeah.
I'm curious.
So so honestly, this journey that I set out on was for me,
Yeah,
right? I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell my sisters because I
yeah,
felt like it was my own experience, and
right,
I felt like I needed it for myself.
right.
And I felt like if it became successful, I
Mm,
could tell my siblings and say, "Oh, look,
yeah,
this is what's happened." And if
yeah,
they're convinced enough to
yeah,
also go on that journey, they would. But I wasn't going to impose, because we like you just mentioned, like clearly we all had different experiences with him. I
yeah,
was much older, even though I was
yeah,
5.
yeah,
The difference between my sisters and my sisters are like Irish twins.
yeah.
I'm 5 and 4 years older than them.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
when I was 5, when they were still babies, they were still
yeah.
young. So and then as we got older, they have
Yeah.
had their own separate encounters with him, and
Okay.
their own stories will be different from what I'm saying. So even though I went on this journey, it worked for me. I was happy about it. It wasn't the same for them.
Yeah.
They still have their, whatever that's brewing with them.
Yeah.
I pray for them every day so that they'll get to a point where they can just let go and just,
Yeah.
because we're all getting older.
Yeah.
I read something today. It was very profound. I said, I wish people saw life this way. The person was celebrating his birthday. He put up on his status +1, but in front
Mm.
of the +1, he wrote "Father from birth, closer to the grave."
Mm.
That hit me. I'm like,
Yep.
whoa,
Yep.
really? That's what it is. But people would just be sentimental and say, don't say that. But it's the
It's
fact.
the truth.
It's the
It's fact
truth.
every
You
day.
know? So
Every
the same way with our parents, they're getting
yeah.
older. You notice when they get older, they too, they start to regret. They start to
Yeah.
realize, they start to do all the had I knowns, oh, I wish. But sometimes it's already too late.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can't really fix certain things. So with them, after I did this, I told my mom.
Yeah.
I told them as well. They'll say, "Oh, I'm happy for you," but
Yeah.
they can't be bothered. That's not
Yeah.
their
Yeah.
own journey. They have their own,
Yeah.
reasons or whatever why they're not doing it. But I did it for myself, honestly, and I'm glad I did it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to tell you that right now we are best friends or we talk
Yeah.
every day, but
Yeah.
that moment needed to be done,
Yeah.
and I'm happy I did it, and I'm happy at that time it helped me on my journey.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. No, definitely. And I think, like you said, because forgiveness is really for you more than even the other person, for your siblings, I don't know if it's like, I think like my siblings and I, where we, again, I think it was really a good thing where it's like, we forgiving for ourselves. It was not about you.
Hmm.
And that way we didn't even need you to quote unquote apologize, or we didn't need to do anything with
Hmm.
you, or you do anything for
Yeah.
us to be okay. And I think,
Hmm.
if that's maybe the case with your siblings, at
Hmm.
least I hope and I pray for them that, regardless of whether or not they ever speak to him and or have a relationship with him, they
Hmm.
can still forgive and still, be good. And that's really the goal. Okay, all right. I think we could talk about this for forever and ever.
I, I I know this is like all those sessions where you say part one, part two,
Yeah, I know.
continue.
I really, I really am considering it, but I think this is enough for people to know,
Hmm.
to think, and ask questions. Like you made one point, for example, and something I've thought about a lot recently, especially as I'm in and out. But I want to be in Nigeria more because my mom is in Nigeria, my dad is in Nigeria, and I want to be closer to them because, like you said, there's no time is not waiting for anyone,
No
and you just
one, no
never know,
one.
right? And I don't want a case where I've seen them once a year, right? Well, anyways, where I'm seeing them once a year. So so there's that. And I think, like you said, we're all getting older and we have to start to take some ownership of some of these things, right?
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things that you're saying as well. I think, like I described, the wisdom that you've shown and the maturity that you've shown through knowing yourself, right?
Hmm.
Figuring out who you are
Yeah.
and learning the things that you need to learn for you to be a better person for yourself, for your friends, for your partner, for your children. Like, that's important. But that's a you work. That's not a whether or not your dad is alive or
Definitely.
present or not.
Definitely.
And I think that's the major thing that I'm taking away from this, that
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, we have a you work to do, and we can't even ever always put that on someone else,
Yeah.
right? Because whether or not you had this call, I think, with your dad, I think you also had started the work. God, just in his mercy, also gave you that additional, opportunity to have a relationship. So I really love it. Okay. All right. You get to ask me one question. Thank you so
Yeah.
much for doing this, by the way. I
No
love this.
problem.
By the way, we're doing this at night. So the fact that, no, we're doing this in the middle of the night, we do what we have to do as women is just, another
Yes. Mm.
another. That's all I'm gonna say. Anyways, you guys ask me one question.
Okay. My one question to you is, what would you say to 16-year-old Nife?
16-year-old Nife.
Yes. She's listening to
So
you right now. She's listening to you. So what will you tell her based on Nife's talking to me right now? What will you tell her,
yeah,
like, in terms of what will you tell her in terms of what she should have not bothered herself about, what she should have not been anxious about, what she should have not been, like, what would you tell her? Like, what would
yeah.
you tell her? Say, oh, 16-year-old Nife, like, tell her stuff.
I think that I was already struggling with faith because of the whole divorce issue and everything. I was still trying to figure out all of that. And that really broke my faith. And I would have told 16-year-old Nife to have faith. Like, God loves you. It's so funny that you said you gave you gave yourself the name Ayon Feje. So that's, if a lot of people know this, but that's how I gave myself Nife. Like, because I'd
Oh,
had, anyways, it's a whole thing, but that's how Oluwanifemi became my name,
wow.
because of, again, I needed to remind myself that God
God
loves me,
loves you. Mm.
and is in love with me, right? And I am
Yes.
seen that be the case of my life or whatever. But anyway, so I would tell 16-year-old Nife, you never needed to worry that God loved you, and you never needed to worry about your future. And I'd have told her, because 16-year-old Nife wasn't exactly the boldest person at that time. And like I said,
Mm.
16-year-old Nife had not taken 4 years of psychology class that now made her a
Mm.
lot better mentally and all of that, right? And stronger and
Mhm.
all of that. So, 16-year-old Nife, I would have told her to be bold and courageous and all of that. And to your point about even, some of these boldness, right? There's a certain level of boldness that even with school, like I didn't have for career, for example,
Mhm.
that I had for every other aspect of my life. I never really worried about marriage. I was not worried. I don't know what to tell you.
Okay.
No, I was going to study nothing for nothing. But like career wise,
Mhm.
I was so worried. I had all these things I wanted to do and things like that. So anyway, so 16-year-old Nufair, worry about faith, never worry about being loved by God, never worry about career or your future. God's got you. And this is what I would tell anybody right now. Just one day at a time, do what you are supposed to do, and then do a little bit extra, right? Because
Mhm.
sometimes when I was coming here as an immigrant, you think, oh, you can't do this because you're an immigrant. You can't do this because you're an immigrant. But I didn't try because I thought I couldn't do it, right? And
Exactly.
the one thing that we need to remember, you need to try and let them first of all say no.
You never
Um,
know until you try.
exactly. But if you have God backing you, then you can do all things
Okay.
through Christ. Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
yeah.
Oh, that's nice. I'm smiling like I'm 16-year-old Nife. I'm looking at you. It's okay. Oh, that's good. I'm happy you're shining. Good to see you on the other side, looking good.
I know, right? Look at God. But thank you so much,
No
T. Thank you
problem.
so much. This was
Yeah,
amazing.
it
And
was. It was. We could have gone on and on. I know there's time
honestly, I
constraints.
know. I'm trying to be good
Yes,
because people are already giving me a hard time about my 1 hour.
I
But
know.
yeah,
I know. I know. I know.
thank you so much. God bless you.
Thank
And
you. It was nice stepping here as well.
wishing you and your dad, honestly, just much more time to
Amen.
continue.
Amen to that. We'll keep working on it. At least I didn't cry. I mean, I didn't shed like actual
Yes,
tears,
yes.
and I'm
I'm very proud of
smiling.
you. I'm
Trust
very
me,
proud of
that's
you.
a win.
Yes.
It's a win.
Very,
It's a
very proud
win.
of you.
I'm proud of
Thank you.
myself too. Thank
Thank
you
you
so much
so
for
much.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me in today's episode. Just like you would share with friends about a great book you read, don't forget to share this if you enjoyed it. Connect with us on IG and Twitter at TWWPcast and get details on the website at worldwithoutpeople.org. And hey, remember to make loving others the story of your life. Until next time, this is the world without people.